That night, we were all sitting in the living room after dinner, celebrating my homecoming from the hospital. Everything felt hopeful, or at least it seemed that way. Then Vanessa handed me a beautifully wrapped box and smiled. "A special present for your recovery," she said, her voice tripping with something I couldn't quite place. So I opened it. Inside was a stack of papers. At first, I couldn't even process what I was looking at. My brain refused to make sense of it. Then I saw Marcus's signature. It was a divorce packet, already signed. I stared at it, my heart pounding. My hands started to shake. I looked up at Marcus. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring at the floor. I turned to Vanessa. She was smirking with pure malice. That's when she said it, "I'll take everything now." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I looked at my parents. My mother's mouth was slightly open, eyes darting between us. My father just nodded slowly, as if this was expected. Marcus still wouldn't look at me. He just sat there, his jaw clenched. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I looked Vanessa right in the eye and smiled. "Then you'll love my gift in return," I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Vanessa's smirk faltered. She hesitated before taking it. I could see the curiosity in her eyes, the slight flicker of fear. She opened it. She barely made it past the first page before she screamed. Vanessa's scream wasn't just shock. It was fear, pure, raw fear. The moment the sound left her lips, she clamped her hand over her mouth like she was trying to shove it back in. But it was too late. Everyone was staring. Marcus shot up from his chair. "What did you do?" His voice was sharp, but there was something else in it, panic. Vanessa flipped through the papers like they might change if she looked at them fast enough. Her hands trembled. Her breathing was uneven. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Vanessa turned to Marcus, eyes wild. "You told me she was finished." "Finished with what?" My mother stood up slowly. "What's going on?" No one answered. Marcus snatched the papers from Vanessa's hands. The moment he saw what was inside, his face lost all color. Perfect. Because inside that envelope wasn't just proof of their conspiracy, that was only the beginning. I knew something was wrong before I had any proof. Marcus had been distant for months during my treatment, coming home late, whispering with Vanessa constantly. It wasn't just stress about my illness. Something was off. And then there was Vanessa. She had always been jealous, but during my recovery, it was different. She was calculating. She would give me these little smiles like she was counting my money already. It made my skin crawl. So I started investigating. At first, I just listened to their hushed conversations, fragments about when she's gone and splitting everything. Then I checked our shared accounts. That's where I found it. Money, hundreds of thousands, being quietly transferred. At first, I thought maybe Marcus was just securing funds for my treatment. But then I saw the destinations, accounts in Vanessa's name. I felt sick. I dug deeper. Hired a private investigator. And what he found made my stomach turn. Marcus wasn't just planning to divorce me. He was systematically stealing from me. I own a cutting-edge medical device company. It's my life's work. I built it from nothing after nearly dying myself. And Marcus, he had been forging my signature on business documents, transferring patents, liquidating assets. Vanessa was coaching him. They were planning to take everything while I was supposedly too sick to notice. They had already put a down payment on a mansion in Malibu, paid for with my innovations. I sat in my office, staring at the evidence, feeling the fire of pure determination. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned their destruction. Marcus was still holding the papers, his hands shaking violently. Vanessa looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor, her face drained of all color. I crossed my legs and leaned back in my chair, watching them with cold satisfaction. "You should keep reading," I said, my voice steady as steel. He did. And his eyes went wide with terror. Because on the next page was a legal notice from my team of corporate lawyers. I was suing them both for fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, and conspiracy to steal intellectual property. I had all the proof, Marcus's forged signatures on patent transfers, the stolen funds from my medical device company, evidence of their systematic asset liquidation, everything meticulously documented. My mother snatched the papers from his trembling hands, scanning them with growing horror. Her face twisted in confusion, then shock, then pure rage as the reality hit her. She turned to Vanessa, her voice shaking. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me my daughters didn't do this to each other." Vanessa didn't answer. She just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Marcus finally found his voice, desperation creeping in. "You can't do this. We're married. That money, those patents, they're community property." I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "No, Marcus. My innovations. My company. My life's work. You systematically stole from me while I was recovering from brain surgery." My voice was calm, controlled, but inside I was burning with righteous fury. Marcus shook his head frantically like he could somehow undo everything. "We can fix this. We can work something out." I laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. "Oh, you already tried to fix things, but you see, I got there first. Because while they were conspiring behind my back, planning to strip me of everything I'd built, I was 3 steps ahead of them. I had already transferred all assets to protected accounts, frozen our joint holdings, and secured my patents with ironclad legal protections. They had absolutely nothing left to steal." Marcus stepped forward, his voice dropping to a pleading whisper. "Let's talk about this privately. Away from everyone. No. No more secrets. No more whispered conspiracies." They had chosen to humiliate me publicly in front of my own parents. Fine. Now it was their turn to face the consequences in front of everyone. I pulled out my final devastating card, a USB drive containing months of surveillance footage. I handed it to my father with a cold smile. "Plug it in, Dad. You need to see what your precious Vanessa has really been up to." Vanessa let out a strangled no. "Don't." But it was too late. The large-screen TV lit up, and suddenly the whole family was watching high-definition security footage from a luxury hotel lobby. Marcus and Vanessa kissing passionately, holding hands, walking into a penthouse suite together, all paid for with money stolen from my medical company. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. My father's face turned crimson with rage and shame. Vanessa covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Marcus just stood there, completely frozen in terror. I stared at them both with ice-cold satisfaction. "Welcome to your reckoning." Vanessa's scream was sharp, raw, like she had just been stabbed through the heart. Marcus turned to her, panic flooding his features. "What is it? What's wrong?" She didn't answer. She just clutched the legal papers like she could make them disappear if she squeezed hard enough. The whole room was dead silent except for the grandfather clock ticking ominously in the corner. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Marcus grabbed the papers from her trembling hands, scanning through them frantically. His face went ashen, then green. "Where the hell did you get this? This can't be real." I tilted my head, smiling with predatory satisfaction. "I don't think that's the question you should be asking, Marcus. The question is, how are you going to explain this to a federal judge?" Marcus's hands were shaking so violently he could barely hold the documents as he flipped to the next page. That's when the real panic set in, when his knees nearly gave out. Because it wasn't just civil fraud charges. It wasn't just the stolen money from my company. There was a federal arrest warrant attached, signed, sealed, and ready for execution. I had spent weeks gathering evidence while pretending to be the helpless recovering patient they thought I was. My private investigator had done his job extraordinarily well. There were bank records, transaction logs, email communications, and even surveillance footage of their meetings. But there was one thing I hadn't expected to find, something that made their betrayal even more criminal. Marcus and Vanessa weren't just stealing from my medical device company. They were laundering money through fake charity organizations. Apparently, Marcus had gotten involved with a network of corrupt contractors who were siphoning funds from government healthcare contracts. At first, I thought it was just him. But Vanessa's name was on incorporation documents for 3 separate shell companies. And that's when it hit me like a thunderbolt. They weren't just betraying me personally. They were stealing from patients, from people who needed medical devices to survive. So I made a phone call to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Marcus took a step back, shaking his head in denial. This isn't real. This can't be happening. This isn't real. Vanessa looked like she was about to collapse, hyperventilating. You wouldn't do this to your own sister. I leaned forward, my voice cutting through her desperation like a blade. Oh, but I already did. The moment you decided to steal from dying patients. My father grabbed the papers from Marcus's nerveless fingers, reading through them with growing horror. His face hardened into granite. My mother gasped, "What the hell have you done? What have you both done?" Marcus bolted for the door like a cornered animal. That's when the sirens started wailing in the distance, growing closer. I had met with federal prosecutors, told them everything. By the time we were done, my case wasn't just civil, it was a full-scale criminal investigation. Turns out, when you forge signatures on medical device patents and steal from government healthcare funds, the FBI takes that very seriously. So does the IRS. So does the FDA. So I gave them everything. Every bank transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent contract, every piece of evidence that showed how they'd been systematically bleeding my company dry while I fought for my life. And they took it very seriously indeed. They told me Marcus and Vanessa were already under federal investigation for healthcare fraud. My evidence was the missing piece that would send them to prison. And then came the final, devastating blow. The lead prosecutor looked at me and said, "Ms. Adrienne, when this goes to trial, your husband and sister could be facing 25 years to life in federal prison." I smiled with cold satisfaction. Perfect. Red and blue lights flashed through the window, casting eerie shadows across the room. Marcus froze like a deer in headlights. Vanessa let out a choked sob, her hands flying to her throat. My mother put a shaking hand over her mouth, her face pale as death. No, this can't be happening. Not to my family. Marcus turned to me, desperation flooding his features. "Please, Adrienne, please, we can fix this. We can make this right somehow." I stood up slowly, grabbing my coat with deliberate calm. "You should have thought about that before you conspired to steal from dying patients, Marcus." The federal agents knocked on the door with authority. Vanessa collapsed to the floor, sobbing hysterically. Marcus, he turned to run toward the back door. Biggest mistake of his pathetic life. The authoritative knock at the door echoed through the house, slicing through the suffocating silence like a blade. Marcus stood frozen in terror. Vanessa's breath came in ragged, panicked gasps. My mother clutched her chest like she might suffer a heart attack. My father's face was stone cold, unreadable, but his jaw was clenched so tightly I thought he might shatter his teeth. Another knock, more insistent. This time a commanding voice followed. "FBI? Federal agents? Open the door immediately." I turned to Marcus, arms crossed, watching him crumple. "Are you going to get that, or should I have the honor?" For the first time in months, Marcus looked genuinely afraid, not just worried, but terrified to his core. Vanessa shot to her feet, gripping his arm with desperate claws. "You promised me this wouldn't happen? You swore the feds would never find out." Her voice cracked with hysteria. Marcus shook her off violently. "Shut up, Vanessa. Just shut your mouth." That was a catastrophic mistake. Her face twisted into something absolutely ugly, filled with pure venom. She let out a sharp, maniacal laugh, wild and completely unhinged. "Oh, don't you dare act like this is all on me. This was your plan." My father stepped between them, his teacher's authority commanding the room. "Someone better start explaining what the hell is going on in my house." No one moved. No one spoke. So I did it for them, my voice cutting through their terror like ice. "Marcus and Vanessa have been having an affair while stealing from my medical device company." Gasps of horror rippled through the room. Marcus flinched like I had physically struck him. My mother's knees buckled, and she had to grab the chair for support. No, that can't be true. Please tell me that's not true." She turned to Vanessa, her voice breaking with betrayal. "Tell me you didn't do this to your own sister." Vanessa didn't answer. She just lowered her head, shoulders shaking with fake remorse. That pathetic display was all the confirmation anyone needed. My mother sobbed, her heart breaking. "You were my daughter too, Vanessa. I raised you. I loved you like my own. Vanessa whispered something too quiet to hear, probably more lies. I stepped closer, my voice deadly calm. Speak up, sister. Let everyone hear your justification. She lifted her head, eyes burning with pure, undiluted hatred. I deserved everything you had. I deserved the success, the money, the recognition. A sick, twisted confession that made my skin crawl. The room felt like it was closing in, suffocating under the weight of her delusion. Marcus ran a shaking hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. He was in full panic mode now, eyes darting desperately toward every exit. This isn't the time for confessions. We need to think, we need to. I cut him off with surgical precision. Oh, I think this is exactly the time for truth. Because I wasn't finished explaining. Marcus didn't just have an affair with my sister. He systematically defrauded my company, stole medical patents, and embezzled funds meant for life-saving devices. I turned to Vanessa with cold fury. And you helped him steal from cancer patients. My father looked absolutely disgusted, his face contorting with revulsion. The knocking at the door became thunderous, more insistent. I walked over with complete composure and opened it wide. 3 federal agents stood there, badges gleaming. Marcus Chen? Vanessa Chen? Marcus turned white as a sheet, all blood draining from his face. The lead agent stepped inside, his voice official and final. Mr. Chen, Ms. Chen, we have federal warrants for your arrests. You're being charged with healthcare fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and theft of intellectual property. Marcus bolted like a coward, sprinting toward the kitchen exit. He barely made it past the hallway before 2 agents tackled him to the ground with professional efficiency. Vanessa screamed like a banshee, scrambling after them on her hands and knees. Stop. You don't understand. This is all her fault. She drove us to this. I let out a laugh, a full, genuine, deeply satisfied laugh. Oh, this should be absolutely fascinating to hear. Vanessa turned on me like a rabid animal, her face crimson and streaked with tears and snot. You're the reason he had to do this. You never appreciated him. You were cold and selfish and obsessed with work. You drove him into my arms. You. Slap. My mother's hand connected with Vanessa's face so hard that the sound echoed like a gunshot. Everyone froze in stunned silence. Vanessa stumbled backward, completely stunned. My mother's chest heaved with righteous fury. Her face was wet with tears of betrayal and rage. How dare you? Her voice shook with barely contained wrath. How dare you stand here in my house and act like you're the victim when you stole from sick people? Vanessa whimpered pathetically, but before she could speak, shut your lying mouth. That came from my father, his voice carrying decades of authority and disappointment. His tone was absolutely dangerous. He turned to Marcus, who was now being handcuffed with professional efficiency. You are no longer my son-in-law. You are dead to this family. Marcus snapped, desperation making him vicious. Oh, please. He barked out a bitter, hysterical laugh. Spare me the righteous dramatics, Richard. You people never gave a damn about anyone but precious Adrian anyway. My father's eyes darkened with cold fury. You did this to yourself, you pathetic excuse for a man. Marcus looked around desperately, seeking any ally in his moment of destruction. Patricia, please. You know I loved her once. My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know who you are anymore. I don't think I ever did. The agent started leading Marcus toward the door in handcuffs. And that's when Vanessa completely lost whatever sanity she had left. She lunged at me like a wild animal. This is your fault. You ruined everything. I hate you. I stepped gracefully to the side, letting her fall flat on her face in front of everyone. No, Vanessa. I just made sure you both paid the price for your crimes. One of the agents grabbed her arms, hauling her up from the floor. She's not under arrest yet, but I'd strongly suggest she leaves before she makes things significantly worse for herself. Vanessa tried desperately to shake them off, sobbing and screaming. Marcus. Marcus, tell them it was all her idea. Tell them she made us do it. But Marcus wasn't looking at her anymore. He just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched in defeat and shame. He wasn't going to save her. No one was. Marcus was taken away in the back of a federal transport vehicle, his head hanging in complete defeat. Vanessa collapsed on the couch, wailing like a wounded animal, but no one moved to comfort her, not even our parents. I turned to my mother and father, my heart heavy but my conscience clear. My mother wiped her tear-stained face with trembling hands. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying. "Adrienne, I'm so deeply sorry. We failed you as parents." I nodded with understanding. I wasn't angry at them. They were decent people who had been manipulated and deceived just as much as I had been. They were victims of Vanessa's lies too. I grabbed my coat from the chair. "I should go. You both need time to process this." Vanessa laughed bitterly from the couch, her voice dripping with venom and self-pity. "Yeah, run away to your perfect life. Just like always, leaving the rest of us to clean up the mess." I walked over to her slowly, crouching down so only she could hear my words. My voice was steady, calm, and absolutely final. "I didn't run, Vanessa. I won. Completely and utterly." Her face crumpled as the reality of her total destruction hit her. I stood up, walked out the door, and left her drowning in the misery she had created for herself. Marcus took a federal plea deal to avoid a lengthy trial. He received 8 years in federal prison and will be required to pay full restitution, money he doesn't have. Vanessa tried desperately to fight me in civil court, claiming emotional distress and family abandonment, but she had absolutely nothing, no evidence, no credibility, no resources. She lost every single case and was ordered to pay my legal fees. I sold our old house and moved my company headquarters to Boston, where the medical technology ecosystem thrives. My business isn't just surviving, it's revolutionizing cardiac care devices and saving thousands of lives annually. The company went public last year, making me worth over $200 million. And for the first time since my surgery, since discovering the depth of my family's betrayal, I am genuinely, completely happy. I'm making a difference in the world, and no one can ever take that away from me again. Thanks for watching this story of justice and redemption. If you enjoyed seeing how truth and determination can overcome even the deepest betrayals, please consider subscribing and pressing the like button. Your support helps us share more stories of people who refuse to be victims.